Shamakund Radha Kund, Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Brindavan Dham Ki, Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Gangamayi Ki, Jamunamayi Ki, Tulsi Devi Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Brihat Radanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki, Sri Gornatai Ki, Sri Giriraj Maharaj Ki, Sri Radhani Lamadava Ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Dana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Dana Brajajana Jamunam Tiram Vanam Chadi Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Sri Srimad His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continuing, we ended with verse 26 yesterday. It was a shorter class. Today's going to be a longer class because there's more commentary to discuss. Now, what I didn't do, for some reason, is I didn't show you this nice graphic. So here's the nice graphic. There's an oak tree with some acorns on the oak tree and the text from yesterday. As a tree, before dying, produces a seed of a future tree, the dying body manifests the seeds of one's material body in the form of one's accumulated karma, thus assuring the continuation of material existence. The material body sinks down and dies. Text 27 for this morning. A man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. He is responsible for their maintenance, and thus all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions, each struggling for her self-interest. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many different directions at once. On one side, the tongue is pulling him to arrange tasty food. Then thirst drags him to get a suitable drink. Simultaneously, the sex organs clamor for satisfaction, and the sense of touch demands soft, sensuous objects. The belly harasses him until it is filled. The ears demand to hear pleasing sounds. The sense of smell hankers for pleasant aromas, and the fickle eyes clamor for pleasing sights. Thus, the sense organs and limbs, all desiring satisfaction, pull the living entity in many directions. Bhaktisiddhanta's translation is much shorter. Each wife of a householder who has many wives tries to attract her husband for her own purpose. The tongue, genital, sense of touch, belly, ears, nose, restless eyes, and working senses attract the embodied soul towards their respective objects of enjoyment. The BBT purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that after understanding this verse, one should merely offer, without attachment, the bare necessities to the guru of one's body. One should keep one's body fit and working in the simplest possible way, and that is the sum and substance of service to this so-called guru. If one desires to faithfully serve the body, one should consider that the body pulls the consciousness of the conditioned soul in many ways at once, and thus the servant of the body, for the servant of the body, there's no possibility of understanding God or even becoming peaceful. Purport by Bhaktisiddhanta, short, one sentence. As a landlord is attracted by his many wives to fulfill their respective self-interests. The objects of this world attract the working senses and knowledge-acquiring senses. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, his commentary. This is Bhaktisiddhanta's gloss. It's also short. One should feed his body only as much as is necessary to maintain it without attachment. This is the way to serve the body as one's spiritual master. When one, due to great attachment, provides the senses with whatever they ask for, the tongue demands palatable food and engagement in gossip, thirst demands water, and the genitals demand the association of women. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. One should give the guru in the form of the body food for maintaining life only, and do that without attachment. For the body, this is service to guru. Quote, but one should feed the body with great faith, unquote. Please hear the truth. The tongue pulls the person attached to his body in one direction for taste in order to degrade the person. Sometimes thirst pulls the person towards water. The genitals pull him for sex. The skin pulls him to touch. The action senses, karma, shakti, tear him apart. Now, the length of this morning's reading is taken from Chaitanya Bhagavat and Bhaktisiddhanta's writing from Chaitanya Bhagavat, Adikanda 129. And the focus is on this section, the mendicant Brahmin, he calls it. So we're going to hear lots of 2.5 pages of kind of like a review of the whole picture. The Avadhuta Brahmin giving his message. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:9-27, that's this morning's verse. The mendicant Brahmana instructs King Yadu as follows, quote, a man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. He is responsible for their maintenance, and thus all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions, each struggling for her self-interest. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many directions at once. On the one side, the tongue is pulling him to arrange tasty food. The thirst drags him to get a suitable drink. Simultaneously, the sex organs clamor for satisfaction, and the sense of touch demands soft, sensuous objects. Seems like the BBT translation just copied this, Bhaktisiddhanta's writing from Chaitanya Bhagavat. Okay, etc. Thus, the senses, organs, and limbs, all desiring satisfaction, pull the living entity in many directions. Paragraph. Lord Krishna instructs Uddhava in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he cites the next chapter, chapter 10, verses 7 and 25 and 27, 28, as follows, quote, one should see one's real self-interest in life in all circumstances, and should therefore remain detached from wife, children, homeland, relatives, friends, wealth, and so on, accompanied by heavenly women. The enjoyer of the fruits of sacrifice goes on pleasure rides in a wonderful airplane which is decorated with circles of tinkling bells and which flies wherever he desires, being relaxed, comfortable, and happy in the heavenly pleasure gardens. He does not consider that he is exhausting the fruits of his piety and will soon fall down to the mortal world. if a human being is engaged in sinful, irreligious activities, either because of bad association or because of being engaged in sinful, irreligious activities, either because of bad association or because of his failure to control his senses, then such a person will certainly develop a personality full of material desires. Thus, he becomes miserly toward others, greedy and always anxious to exploit the bodies of women. When the mind is so polluted, one becomes violent and aggressive and, without the authority of Vedic injunctions, slaughters innocent animals for sense gratification, worshipping ghosts and spirits. The bewildered person falls fully into the grip of unauthorized activities and thus goes to hell, where he receives a material body infected by the darkest modes of nature. That's Coming Attractions, next chapter. And then later in the same canto, Uddhava Gita, chapter 14, he quotes Krishna speaking to Uddhava. Being conscious of the eternal self, one should give up association with women and those intimately associated with women. Sitting fearlessly in a solitary place, one should concentrate the mind on me with great attention. And then later in the same canto, chapter 17, 2 verses, 33 and 56, Krishna says to Uddhava, those who are not married, sannyasis, vanaprasthas, and brahmacharis, should never associate with women by glancing, touching, conversing, joking, or sporting. Neither should they ever associate with any living entity engaged in sensual activities, but a householder whose mind is attached to his home and who is thus disturbed by ardent desires to enjoy his money and children, who is lusty after women, who is possessing a miserly mentality, and who unintelligently thinks everything is mine and I am everything, is certainly bound in illusion. And then continues chapter 21 of Uddhava Gita. Krishna gives the following instructions. Quote, this is chapter 21, verses 18 through 21, 4 verses. By refraining from a particular sinful or materialistic activity, one becomes freed from its bondage. Such renunciation is the basis of religious and auspicious life for human beings and drives away all suffering, illusion, and fear. One who accepts material sense objects as desirable certainly becomes attached to them. For such attachment, lust arises, and this lust creates quarrel among men. From quarrel arises intolerable anger, followed by the darkness of ignorance. This ignorance quickly overtakes a man's broad intelligence. Oh, saintly Uddhava, a person bereft of real intelligence is considered to have lost everything. Deviated from the actual purpose of his life, he becomes dull, just like a dead person. One more reference from, this is all one purport. One reference from chapter 26 of Uddhava Gita, text number 3. One should never associate with materialists, those dedicated to gratifying their genitals and bellies. By following them, one falls into the deepest pit of darkness, just as a blind man who follows another blind man. In the same chapter, verses 4 through 24 describe the results of association with women by obtaining Ilaz San Pururava. Paragraph. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 5.72, the following verse is found. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing the ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. That's Jamunacharya, right? Jamunacharya. Here's another from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The following verse is found. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental living service of Krishna, um, alas, how can an intelligent person who has awakened even a little attachment for Krishna enjoy this material body which is full of blood, covered with skin and flesh, and stinks of mucus? In the eighth wave, it is said, 1. Alas, I'm enthusiastically engaged in relishing varieties of enjoyment in this gross body, which is composed of mucus, semen, and blood covered by skin. Oh my God, I'm so wretched that I am too lazy to remember Krishna, who is the Supersoul and the personification of transcendental bliss. 2. When will I give up affection for this gross body, which is full of flesh, blood, and pus, and again expertly engaged with love in the service of fanning with Chamra the Supreme Lord Hari, who is beyond the reach of argument and who sits on a golden throne? 3. A devotee of Lord Vishnu who intensely loathes seeing a Padmini woman endowed with all good qualities, considering her bad association, can travel anywhere, dancing and remembering the lotus feet of the Lord. 4. As soon as remembrance of associating with women awakens in my mind, my lips curl with disgust. My mind is not satisfied with the activities meant to attain impersonal samadhi, like hearing and remembering, and I have no interest for attaining the mystic perfections because, O Lord, my mind is extremely attached only to the worship of your lotus feet. Conclusion. Oh, there it is. Okay. Conclusion. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Baladev are the eternal shelter of all devotees, they are the suitable personalities for enjoying with the gopis who are under the shelter of Madhurya Ras. The gopis have no material conceptions like conditioned souls. In other words, the living entities in this material world consider themselves enjoyers and enjoy the company of women only due to material conceptions. But when Lord Balaram, who is the source of Vishnu Tattva, performs the Rasa Lila, there is no possibility of any material abominations or illicit behavior. Therefore, when the most fortunate munis who are conversant with the Supreme Lord Baladev's glories see his pastimes through divine eyes, they offer prayers with folded hands. I thought there was more, but that's it. So that I don't forget. Here's the nice graphics for text 27. Check out the graphic. Pretty cool, huh? The 5 senses, 5 knowledge acquiring senses. And the message: a man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. He is responsible for their maintenance, and thus all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions, each struggling for her self-interest. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many different directions at once. There's the graphic again. Really good. Compliments to Shruti. Okay. And then the last for this morning. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that after understanding this verse, one should merely offer without attachment the bare necessities to the guru of one's body. One should keep one's body fit and working in the simplest way. And that is the sum and substance of service to this so-called guru. Well, we just heard Bhaktisiddhanta's taking some texts from the upcoming sections of Uddhava Gita, and there seems to be a thread, a really prominent one, like screaming at us, detachment. Of course, detachment is incomplete without attachment, but detachment from the temporary is required in order to progress further in the attachment to the Supreme. What's coming to mind as I'm speaking this is something I'm sure you've heard, but just a little. The second Back to Godhead magazine I received when I was in college had a little kind of like a comic type of line drawing illustration of the following. It was from Bhaktisiddhanta when during one Vrindavan parikrama, a question was asked because in the evenings he would have darshan and or give a class and have questions and answers. So the question was, why do we see that two persons side by side, seemingly doing the same things in the same way, one person makes very swift advancement, the other doesn't? Why? Why? When we see that, what's the reason? And then Bhakti said to answer the question by telling the celebrated wedding party story. And it goes like this. In Vedic culture, the groom travels to the place where the bride lives, and the early morning they have the ceremony. In the afternoon they travel back to the groom's home. So one evening, as the sun was setting, the relatives and family members of the groom got in a boat and requested the boatman to take them downstream to the village or place where the bride lives, so in the morning they could have the wedding ceremony. So they're jolly, they get in the boat and conversing and eventually fall asleep. And morning comes, the sun is up, they look around, happy day, this is the wedding day, etc., etc. And they see they're in the same place. And they become angry at the boatman. What have you done? Did you fall asleep? He said, no. I was rowing all night long and I don't know what happened. And they found out that the anchor hadn't been pulled. So they didn't go anywhere. Although he was rowing all night. We don't know what happened with the wedding. But the story is, if you maintain attachments, that's like the anchor. And no matter what your efforts may be otherwise, it's not going to take you to where you want to go. So here's a nice topic, A or B. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat yakinchana sarvayar ganais taitra samasute sura harava bhakta shukuto mahadgana. So if you're a devotee, just do devotion, and all good qualities like detachment will come. And other good qualities like don't get angry and don't make offenses, and all good qualities will come. Just do bhakti. Or B, there's support for that. You don't need to make any extraneous endeavor. All good qualities will come. You'll find that statement made in a number of places by Srila Prabhupada. Or B, the message is through good association, bhakti awakens, and when bhakti awakens, then you desire to come before Krishna and Krishna smiles. Krishna will be pleased with you. And knowing that Krishna will be pleased with you if your contaminations are eradicated, then you carefully try to eliminate those contaminations. And one of those, so those contaminations are you cultivate the good qualities and kick out the bad qualities, or reduce acting upon the bad qualities. You actually actively cultivate good qualities for the pleasure of Krishna, including this renunciation topic. So, A or B? And anybody that says B, somebody that's over in the A column can say, wait a minute, Prabhupada said, no, you don't need to make any extra endeavor. All good qualities will come. So what about that? And an answer to that is, when on the strength of bhakti, then when you make an endeavor to please Krishna, that's the bhakti principle, then you do endeavor and Krishna enables you to overcome those difficulties. So my conviction is B. Automatically, Burijan Prabhu wrote a nice little essay, among many other things that he's written. And it's the topic is, what does this word automatically mean? When you read it, it automatically something. And it's in essence, his essay says what I just said is B. Automatically means, and on the strength of bhakti, there's the downstream effect of bhakti. That's the automatically. It's the bhakti is the horsepower, and the bhakti horsepower moves things not mechanically in the sense of like a machine or like a vending machine, but it moves moves out the bad qualities and brings in the good qualities on the strength of bhakti, and it's something that we actively cultivate in the mood of pleasing Krishna. I'm going to go over here for just a minute. Just yesterday, this question was asked. I hope you don't mind a little deviation from what we just read. Somebody outside this country sent a little, see if I can find it. There we go. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, no, Canto 1, chapter 3, text 34, purport. Sarva? 1:3:34, purport. Therefore, by His grace, the external energy which is employed in illusioning those living beings who want to have it subsides by the will of the Lord in terms of repentance and penance for the conditioned soul. And the very same energy helps the purified living entity make progress on the path of self-realization. So there's a devotee that's taking Bhakti Vaibhav, and in their Bhakti Vaibhav class 1:3:34, this purport topic was discussed. And in offline with the teacher, there was a couple of options, this or that. The chicken and the egg question, which comes first? The repentance comes first and then Krishna's mercy comes, or Krishna's mercy comes and then the repentance comes, which is similar to our topic that we're just going over right now. What's the function of knowledge and detachment in the bhakti process? So, in all of this, uh, what Prabhupada is writing in this purport isn't going to happen without the association of a devotee, sadhu sangha. And sadhu sangha means someone who is a devotee, and they, through their quality of bhakti, they pass on that quality of bhakti in one method or another, or combined ways of passing bhakti on to another. And when bhakti is passed on, because when you're covered by illusion, you're not feeling repentant. You may be suffering, but you're not feeling repentant. And that's, where the body is the instructor. You suffer a lot. Gosh, this isn't working out. Let me do a U-turn. But the U-turn doesn't last because you still want to be the enjoyer. So it has to be association of a devotee. And it's not even just somebody that's got knowledge and you go, yeah, that's good knowledge. But the inclination to be the enjoyer is still there. So bhakti is necessary. And when bhakti association comes, then a little light goes on. A little light is, I really, I've been making a big mistake. For how many lifetimes, who can say? But at least presently, I'm making a big mistake in seeking happiness through the senses, etc. Then comes some recognition, and then comes regret. It's called the 4 R's: recognition, regret, and then rectification. Regret. So that's this, repentance and penance. It's in this purport. When Krishna sees that, then he can reduce the influence of Maya and increase the influence of the internal potency, whereby when the same energy acts in a different way for the one who's recognizing the goal of life and repentant for misusing this human form of life. And it's really so the bhakti principle needs to be cultivated. It's not automatic. It's automatic, but it's not automatic. It's automatic as long as the bhakti principle is alive, but it can cool, or Bhakti Siddhanta's term is slacken. And then Maya comes again. Not later. Immediately Maya comes. You slacken. Immediately Maya is there, ready to engage you in illusory activity. Immediately. So that this little purport that we just read from Chaitanya Bhagavat is helping me to understand, looking ahead at the whole of Uddhava Gita. This is a really heavy, repeated over and over topic, the not indulging oneself in the temporary, you're pulling the anchor so you can progress. And if you don't want to progress, you're not going to pull the anchor. You can pull the anchor and then drop the anchor again. Making connection with Krishna is the bhakti principle, and it keeps one progressing. Don't neglect the bhakti principle and just engage in the externals. Engage in the externals and don't neglect the bhakti principle while doing. Then something will happen. Something beyond treading water will happen. Okay. It's a nice topic. Let's see if there's some discussion.
First question is from Sucharita Devidasi. What is one's service to Krishna?
That's it. Well, in simple language, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam.
We have a question from Shrida Das. I have this question from the reading of King Nabi, father of Rishabdev, from the fifth canto. In the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 5.3.14, Srila Prabhupada says that Maharaj Nabi was inclined to performing great sacrifices for begetting a son. The son might be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But such a material desire, be it great or insignificant, is brought about by the influence of Maya. In the same purport, Srila Prabhupada again says, it was no fault on Maharaj Nabi's part that he wanted a son. He wanted a son like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the best of all sons. So, according to this purport, could I kindly understand from you how King Nabi's desire is considered material, but at the same time with no fault?
Uh, there are a number of. This is one of many writings of our founder Acharya, where he says one thing, and then later seems to say the opposite of that one thing, or contradicts the one thing to its opposite, and both are stated as in a declarative way. And one one of the ways that I have tried to approach those kinds of situations is to try to get to the bottom of what's the message that Prabhupada was wanting to convey when he made this statement, and the message that Prabhupada wanted to convey when he made that statement, and just take the essence of the message he wanted to convey, to reconcile two, at least apparently, diametrically opposite statements, whether it's made in the same purport or some other section, or whatever. This is a hermeneutics approach, and what does that mean? Hermeneutics approach. Well, we mentioned this the other day, but the Shastra Advisory Council has spent several years, and prior to them, another group of devotees. So it's about a 10-year developing project to come up with guidelines for how to understand Prabhupada's teachings and the Vedas in general, Prabhupada's writings in particular. And there are a number of things to look at when studying a text. And one of them is what I just mentioned, was the intention behind. Now, it may not be so easy to discern the intention behind. And so one of the things that helps to get the intention behind a statement is, I call it the big picture, or their comprehensive study of what Prabhupada has said or what the Vedas say on a given topic, not just a piecemeal something here, something there. What's the intention? Is there a consistent intention behind this particular statement, looking at the big picture of what the Vedas have to say on this topic? That's a lot of words. The short is, it's not easy to answer your question. it's not easy to find something where something apparently is diametrically opposite and contradictory, and how do you process that? Um, because Nabhi is or becomes the father of an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, one can justifiably say or write or express that his desire to have a son, and even to have a son like the personality of Godhead, is not a material desire. It's not Maya. And then on the other hand, one can say, perhaps a message that Prabhupada is wanting to convey is um, simply the desire to have a son. I mean, let's go to Ramayana because we spent so much time with Ramayana. Dasarath had a daughter, and the daughter, Shanta, was put in the care of his dear friend, the king of Anga. So he already had a daughter, but he wants a son. He wants a son for, it's a religious duty. So can one have a desire to perform religious duty and is Maya? Yes. If the goal is not satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, it's just performance of religious duty, then it's a mode of goodness, Maya, but not um, still binding for the performer. It's elevating, but binding. So that may be a way of understanding Prabhupada saying it's still the illusory energy. Even when he wants, and if it's done in the sense of a duty, then it's still the illusory energy. There's still bondage. Mode of goodness bondage, but bondage. And then another is because it's in relation to the personality of Godhead, and in fact, an incarnation becomes his son. It's not material. So there's 2 points that are being made. One statement says this, the other statement says that. And I don't know the context, so I want to know the context, because that's another hermeneutics rule. What's the context? But it seemed, just hearing, take away all those words, the hermeneutics kind of model of looking at things, there's 2 different ways of looking at religious duties. One is material and the other is transcendental. And for anybody here in the room, or did you take the hermeneutics course yet, Radha Krishna? Presently, okay. The hermeneutics, the Shastra Advisory Committee just completed an 8-part hermeneutic seminar for teachers. Just completed it. And I'm sure they're going to do it again and again and again, because they want to make this like a standard way of dealing with questions like this one. We read this here, we read that there. How do we understand? And so it's going to be taught widely. Initially it's kind of they're test running it. It's engaging. It's there's a time commitment to understand, to take the course, 8-part course. That's a long answer to a short question. Next.
Question from Uttama Bhakta Prabhu. People had many wives. One of the reasons was the psychophysical nature. Srila Prabhupada stopped this practice in our society Is it because people are mostly focused on the externals?
Well, there may be many reasons, but one he would speak in favor of it for in various reasons at various times. But it's not a practice. It's not a practice in largely. I mean, it may be. I don't know. I read something somewhere, and it may be that the Mormons who are by their faith are polygamous may have made a breakthrough in the laws, at least in the state of Utah. I'm not sure about that, but that's the main restriction that I can recall Prabhupada speaking about. We don't do that.
Next question is from Alicia Israni. Nitya Siddhas have no attachment to matter at all due to strong attachment to Krishna since time immemorial. How can we follow them in perfect manner because we cannot imitate them?
How can we do what?
Follow them.
How can we follow them? You don't have to be perfect to follow a perfect. With faith, there's this footstep and that footstep and this footstep, and imperfectly you follow because you're imperfect, but you follow. The heart is in the principle and faith in the person and the principle, and you make your best effort and you follow.
Question from Shamakundas. You mentioned about the importance of devotee association to aid knowledge and detachment. I know practicing devotees who practice hearing and chanting at home while, while consciously avoiding physical association with devotees, not just due to COVID, but due to having negative feelings about devotees. They try to avoid sadhakas but are eager to meet and serve senior and elevated devotees. At what stage of devotion is it advisable that one can stay away from the physical association of sadhakas? My apprehension is that one remains in a bubble while having only association of senior devotees by Vani and avoiding physical association of sadhaka devotees.
It's a little mixed up. The question is mixed up, but the principle, it's in. We'll hear this verse on Sunday because the topic is uh, aspiring for or reaching for or cultivating sadhu sangha, because it came up in our discussion over the past weekend. But one of Lord Chaitanya's verses to Sanatana Goswami says, even in the most advanced stages of bhakti, association of devotees is essential. Now, how might one take association of devotees might look like this and that. But if there's opportunity for advanced association, you seek. And if one is thinking, well, I only want to associate with advanced devotees, then where's the compassion of those that are not the advanced devotees? So something is missing. There's a hole in that bucket. That's my answer. Anything in the room? Going once? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai.